Hello, this is my first time doing this. We're going to try to get this to work. This is chapter 17, Environmental Hazards and Human Health. To start us off on this today, thinking about baby bottles and canned food. This is a time right now where we're thinking about canned food. I'm recording this in March of 2020, so right amidst the coronavirus outbreak, and probably eating some canned food. What does it mean for us? Are we exposing ourselves to things unnecessarily? It's something to think about. There are in some canned goods, most canned goods, there's this plastic lining to them. One of the components in there is bisphenol A or BPA. And BPA is known to leach out of those products, that plastic coating, into your water, if it's a water bottle, or into maybe your green beans or whatever it is you're eating. And BPA is a hormone mimic. Specifically, it mimics estrogen. And on this slide, you can see some of those impacts of the estrogen mimic. So, is this widespread? What's the deal with it? Well, it turns out that it is pretty widespread. We'll get to that in a second. Um, BPA, just to get a little bit more about it, it's found in a lot of different polycarbonates and hardened plastics. So you see the variety of things where you can actually find it used. When Americans were tested for presence of BPA, um, you know, look at that, over 90% of Americans 6 or older had BPA levels above what is allowed by the EPA. So it's pretty widespread. It's an issue. I mean, are you concerned about it? What does it mean for you? This is a good question, and it's something to think about. And do the effects or risks differ with children versus adults? So if you're still going through a maturation process, should you be worried about it? These are good questions. Kind of makes this like an ominous picture, which would otherwise be a baby just drinking out of a bottle going to sleep. All right, so when we face health hazards in our everyday life, we can break these into a variety of different types of hazards listed here. Thinking about these hazards, first thing to think about really is risk. And risk can be defined as the probability of suffering harm from a hazard. It's important to keep in mind the difference between probability and possibility. So probability usually has like odds with it. So it's a 1 in 2 chance. Flipping a coin, you're going to get a heads or a tails, unless it lands on its edge. I know, before you even say anything in the comments. But yeah, those are the options. Possibility is more like, is it possible that it could happen? And possibility is often ignoring probability. So is something, outlandish possible? Yeah. Is it likely? Probably not really. So that's one of the things. Is it possible, something could happen to you when you're riding in an airplane? I don't know. Yeah. Is it probable? No, usually not. Airplanes, compared to automobiles, are very safe based on probabilities. But how we assess that risk is an interesting question. Do individuals of different ages, or just individual to individual, do people interpret risk the same way? And chances are there are differences. There's risk in everything we do. How do we manage that risk? I've got to get groceries at some point. And again, is it possible some things happen to me on that trip to the grocery store? Yeah. Is it probable? Not really. And so you have to manage that risk. So this is what I was talking about here. We identify a hazard, is it likely or not? So probability is more of like that likely end of it. And what would be the consequences if we are affected by that? And then managing it, it's like, well, what about this compared to this? So like I could do this to meet my need or that to meet my need. And is there a difference in risk between those? How can I reduce that risk? Are there different strategies for reducing that risk? And then, you know, you can invest in things to reduce your risk, but how much are you willing to spend? So like, are you willing to invest in CO2 detectors or carbon monoxide detectors in your home or fire extinguishers? Some people are. How many are you willing to invest in? So what kind of commitment are you willing to make to it? So these are those different types of risks that we can face. A word that you might hear, especially right now, is pathogen. And a pathogen is an organism that causes disease in other organisms. Notice that's pretty broadly defined. It's just generally an organism. So we could talk about, like protozoans. Something in the kingdom Protista causes malaria. All right. We talk about bacterial pathogens. We can talk about prions. We can talk about viruses. So there are different kinds of pathogens. I know you're thinking like some of those things aren't organisms, and you're technically correct that they don't meet all. Some of those don't meet the qualifications, the characteristics of all living things, but they're still infectious. And so we generally refer to pathogens as infectious agents causing disease. In addition, there's chemical, physical, cultural, and lifestyle choices. Well, that's where we're going to end this section. I'll make another video for the next one. All right. See you next time.